Hello and welcome to DCP Live episode number 265, a very special edition because we're started super early in comparison, even though we're late and early at the same time. We have a very special episode today. We've got Chris Proctor, design lead from Bungie, on the show today. Hello, Chris.
Hello, lovely to be here.
We brought you on. We brought you on because we need to get down to the bottom of the barrel, or the bottom of the facts of Australian lore, and Mylan hasn't been cutting it for us.
No.
So
when are we getting another Tarabar? Another Australian-based gun.
Interesting. No comment. But it's
Mylan
on my mind as well.
Mylan keeps
Koala
telling
version.
us about how everybody loves drinking Foster's beer down in Australia. So
You shut
is
your
that-
filthy mouth.
I told you this would happen.
People troll
man.
us with that. Like most of the game studios I've been at in the US, they will deliberately go and buy Australians Fosters. Like jokes.
Mhm.
Good move.
Amazing.
Good move.
Absolutely amazing. Well, we got a lot to dig into, obviously. Before we jump into the weapon tuning and the TWAB and all that stuff, it'd be great if maybe you could give people a quick overview of what you do at Bungie, so they know who's doing the stuff that you're talking about.
Who does the stuff with the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm here representing the weapons team, which is fairly large. Like we've got 4 designers plus 2 on loan for helping us with weapon crafting for Witch Queen, and the whole weapons team is like 30 people or something.
Cool.
It keeps growing. But I'm the weapons feature lead as of December 2019, so season of arrivals onwards.
Awesome. Does that
So
does that involve like designing from top to bottom the weapon and like what it does, or is it more in with the sandbox specifically?
So the weapons designers in general come up with all the weapons that we're going to make for a season, exotics and legendaries. Go and make the sort of gameplay side of all of them, like build all the legendaries and their stats, build all of the legendary perks and exotics, and we do weapon balance tuning as well.
Cool.
Which is like always a discussion with the rest of sandbox, like abilities and armor and everything. So everyone's on the same page when we mess with stuff.
Cool. Awesome. Well, very exciting. We're very thankful for you to join us today on the show. So shall we get into it?
It's a big old weapons swap.
Yeah.
Lots of information. I think people were like, yes, what does that mean? So having you here will be perfect.
Yeah.
I feel like our community managers were trolling a little bit when they said, "Now, don't expect it to be a huge one. It's a mid-season update."
Seems pretty
definitely.
big. Yeah. Yeah, let's
Isn't that like half the job of being a community manager? Is trolling the community.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's true. It is.
they get trolled back. It's fair.
Yeah. Part of the gig for sure. Watts, do you want to do your thing and read through the stuff, or do you want someone else
Do we want to start with the archetypes and kind of talk about that a little bit,
Mhm.
and then go into the specific changes for weapons that are coming?
Yeah.
Do that? So archetypes for shotguns in season 11, it's going to be getting reduced slug shotgun PvE damage bonus from 30% to 20%, and gave pellet shotguns a 10% PvE damage bonus. So I think in here it's just saying like slug shotguns generally outperform all of shotguns in PvE. So is that decision kind of trying to bring more shotguns into viability in PvE?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of slug shotguns.
Yeah,
Honestly,
they're
I
very
love
fun.
them. But yeah, when we buffed them in season 11, no one was using them at all in PvE ever, right? Because they require you to aim down sights and aim for the head, and they weren't giving you any extra damage. So we buffed them pretty hard then, thinking that we needed to do that to encourage people to use them. And hey, guess what? People used them, and now they're like highest DPS weapon in the game. Kind
Yes,
of like they
they're very-
outperform a lot of heavies and that kind of thing. It's just a little bit too much. I don't think we need to remove the buff that they got completely. But we felt like bringing them down a little bit and bring pellets up a little bit seemed reasonable. I could see us touching both of those again in the future a bit.
So I got
When
a
you're
question.
looking at something like this,
Yeah.
Chris, are you looking at like how much players are using them, like the statistics on how much players are using them? Are you looking at how much damage they do, like per use, or how do you figure something like this out?
Yeah, so we look at three things. Like all of us play the game. So we consider our own experiences playing in like either internal playtests or when we play the live game. We look at like we have charts of all of the like DPS or like sustained damage or whatever for all of the weapon types. And we do look at usage more as a way to point us towards possible problems than as like a tuning around usage, which isn't actually a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
yeah, those three things.
I have a question on actual balance because, like, I understand the desire to bring things in line, but do you find there's like how do you go about deciding what needs to stay even versus what can shine? You know, because clearly some things are going to shine because they're fun to use and also because they do lots of damage. And then, like, I understand the PvP side of things needing to have a lot of balance versus the PvE side. Sometimes it's fun to just have an outlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the goal is every weapon type should be viable in
Mhm.
all content. We're not aiming for like all special weapon types should have dead even usage, like 20% usage each or anything like that. It's fine if like regular shotguns are 40% and like sniper rifles are 15 or whatever, as long as you can compete with any weapon type in PvP and any weapon will work in the bulk of content in the game.
Nice.
Oh,
I've had a lot
that makes
of
sense.
questions from our community around artifact mods, and obviously that sort of skews what's performing well in a season. How do you take that into consideration? And is that a sort of intention each season to sort of have this artifact mod that, you know, brings something to the forefront that performs really well, or will that change in the future?
I mean, weapons team doesn't like solely own artifact mods. Like those are owned
Yeah.
by the armor team. We
Yeah.
will obviously work with them on it and figure out what would be good for the game. And in the past, it's certainly been we want this weapon type to be really effective this season. I think like we've demonstrated we can do that, right? Like everyone is
Yeah.
using fusion rifles this season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Which
everyone
is
uses
awesome.
grenade launchers, right? Which is cool, and we like that kind of stuff. We don't feel like it's overall healthy to grant such large damage buffs to a specific weapon type because it sort of forces players to use that. It doesn't encourage them to
Yeah.
do it. So I think we'll see a lighter hand on that kind of stuff and other ways
Okay.
of sort of mixing up what you want to use each season.
Sure.
Cool.
With this specific shotgun change, with pellet shotguns getting the 10% PvE damage bonus, how good is Fourth Horseman?
I mean, it's great for really, really narrow situations, right? Like if you need to get a ridiculous amount of damage out in a very short time period, that's the gun you go to. But there are very few situations in the game where that is super valuable. Like my raid group always uses that for the fuses in Deepstone Crypt. Just it's like the best way of breaking those instantly. But yeah, it's not seeing a whole lot of usage. I would like to come back and look at that at some point, but it's not super high on our list.
Yeah, Fourth Horseman is just a very fun weapon. It's just
Yeah.
a fun gun to
Yeah,
use.
high
Got a
in the
fun
fun factor.
sound.
Yep.
It's very fun.
Hmm.
Next we have an increased to PvE damage by 10% for linear fusion rifles. And of course we saw a lot of linear fusion rifle and fusion rifle usage because of particle deconstruction, the artifact mod. So I assume that this change is kind of made to keep people wanting to use linear fusions even after that mod goes away and not have them just be completely useless.
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, usage of fusion rifles and linear fusions is super, super high right now because of particle deconstruction and whatnot. We think that particle deconstruction is largely why, and they are pretty not high risk, high reward, but they require a lot of precision to
Right.
really deliver the best possible
Yeah.
DPS, and they don't reward it to a high enough degree right now. We don't think they need a big buff because they just got one, but like another 10%. The nice thing about this as well is that since particle deconstruction is still around, they'll get a bit more time where they've got that damage bonus and they've got particle deconstruction, and they'll drop back down to the level we want them at when that goes away.
So it's going to be a fun time with when the December patch comes in
Oh,
with linear fusions for a little bit. That's going to be fun because like hitting a wizard in the head is not the easiest thing. They have tiny little heads.
Yeah.
So
Always
yeah, I agree with that.
wiggling.
They're always bob.
I do think this a lot. Like a lot of our enemies have very small heads.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a
I
sign
love
of their
the-
intelligence?
What about them ogres, man? Them giant.
The ogres are great.
Ogres, they're the big brains. Yeah.
Yeah, I always found the ogre's crit box is finicky for me for whatever reason. Yeah, I think it's just I'm bad. That's why I just realized I'm bad. Better the game.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't hit the wizard's head. Yeah, well, it's probably be a problem. Next, I'm really excited about this. Is caster swords. So they're reducing the heavy attack ammo cost from 8 to 5. And I'm really excited about this because we have things like the Trials of Osiris sword that can get what's the big explosion?
Chain reaction. Yeah.
Chain reaction. So I'm using that mostly on like mobs, right? And not trying to necessarily always use it against a boss. But because it's always had it's used a lot of ammo, you don't tend to have a ton of ammo with the caster swords. It felt like I couldn't do that super reliably.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm loving this.
Yeah, that's a great change. Looking forward to that a lot.
This might not. Oh, this isn't your area again, but with champion mods, I think the thing that always influenced me using swords and like GMs was you didn't get the stun, like an overload stun on a cast. It would be super viable if you did. Do you know anything about like whether that would be viable in the future? You know, you got teleporting captains with overload and they just get away from you basically, and you find it's really difficult to use swords. And casting looks like it would be the best option because, you know, you could use it at range. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually agree. Like, I think that in the event that we see sword artifact mods come back in the future, that we'd do a pass on caster swords and make sure that they're behaving as you'd expect. Because yeah, like you throw that blade out, you do expect it to trigger those mods.
Yeah, cool, awesome.
Yeah, and they're just really fun. You know, you have to
Yeah,
throw
they're fun. They make
a
you look
magical particle at a monster with swords. It's
Space
great.
magic,
It's okay. Space
right?
magic.
It's an embodiment of space magic and a sword.
So next we have bows. So here it does say that in season 11 the bow damage was up 10% versus rank and file enemies, and having seen this in game for a few seasons, it seems safe to nudge them up again. So it's getting an increase in damage versus rank and file enemies by 10%.
Cool.
And rank and file is of course just like your average
Good drag.
Joe.
Right.
Your average Joe drag. Yeah.
Yeah, that was again one of these things where even after the previous change, occasionally you'd leave an enemy at just a sliver of health.
Yes.
And
yeah.
if you're that close, we feel like we should just, give you the kill.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. I've kind of felt that way about bows in PvE as well, where it's like I like using them, and Trinity Ghoul is super fun to use, and Lemon Arc is really good in GMs. But leaving so many enemies with just a little smidge of health.
Yeah, doesn't feel good.
No, it feels
Yep.
sad.
The exotics is part of the motivation for that as well. Like some of them are going to be, like they'll really bump up the difference between killing a whole room full of enemies and not killing any of them can be that extra 10%.
Yeah, for sure.
What Trinity
Yep.
Ghoul says, yes,
Right.
probably.
Right.
Yeah, they're gonna be strong.
Nice.
Nice.
Trinity Ghoul, man.
Yeah.
Now sidearms and fusion rifles is a very interesting note in the TWAB. Would you like to just explain what's
I'm
going on
highly
with
curious about
sidearms
this.
and fusions?
Yeah, so typically with weapons that we intend to be hit scan on the design side, we set the projectile speed super high. Like we normally use 9999 as just being, oh, that's a big number. And behind the scenes, the engine calculates whether this would hit its maximum distance in a single frame and converts it to hit scan, like sort of as a performance optimization.
Yeah.
I should ask some of the previous sandbox designers about this, like Newscom and whatnot, because sidearms and fusion rifles were set to 999. And if you're running at 30 frames a second, that's still hit scan. But if you're running at 60, it just crosses that line where it might take 2 frames to get to the target.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and we feel like So there are people who've complained about hit registration on sidearms and occasionally fusion rifles a bit over time. And specifically the Massive Breakdowns podcast community just kept hammering on, like, we're sure these aren't hit scan. Like, the data says they're hit scan. I don't know. But yeah, and eventually dug into it and found that there was this underlying issue, which couldn't possibly have shown up until people were regularly running the game at 60 frames or higher.
So if you're
Right.
running at 200 FPS, then you potentially could detect the projectile feel of the
Yeah.
bullet. Interesting.
Yeah, if you're shooting at something super far away with a like a weapon like this, like a sidearm or even linear fusion rifles, they're the same thing. So if you're standing on the landing zone in Artifact's Edge and like shooting a cabal like 100 meters away or something, if you're high enough frame rate, you will see a delay between when you fire the shot and when you see the damage number.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So this is going to make sidearms and fusion rifles better on the 60 FPS and above.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that. I love both those weapons.
I think particularly since people had been complaining for ages that they weren't great on PC.
Yes.
I feel like that's a smoking gun.
Yeah, you saw that a lot, right? And some people were saying it's because of the controller, like using a sidearm just feels better on controller. But you just saw less people using sidearms on PC. So it's very interesting to see this kind of math behind it, and that maybe that's why they didn't feel as good and people, strayed away from them.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's part of it. Like, I mean, sidearms also benefit a lot from reticle friction, which only exists on controller, right? So that's for sure part of it as well. But like, if you were using a controller on PC, you would still be subject to the non-hit scan thing.
Yeah.
Very
So
fascinating.
it's going to be crispy. I'm excited. And next we're jumping into more specifics, and we're starting with Vex Mythoclast, which people have been very upset about since the buff, but also were very upset when it first came out, so obviously it needed to be buffed. But the change that's being made is it's having the aim assist stat reduced by 25, and then reduce the linear fusion rifle mode aim assist cone scaler from 1.1 to 1.05. You could explain that for all of us who are like, what's a cone? Unlike the firing range, who know all about cone masters.
Yeah, so when you compare Vex Mythoclast to other like auto rifles in that family, sort of the high impact auto rifles, it's got way more aim assist. And like when you crank that up too high, it starts to feel very, very sticky, like to the point where you almost can't miss shots. It's not actually like it's sort of it's oppressive to play against, but it's not being used that much, which I think is because like you can still peak shot people pretty easily with a hand cannon. It doesn't really matter if they're using it or not. But yeah, we feel like that ease of use in Crucible was the way to address it. Like we do want it to have that slightly faster fire rate, makes it a bit special.
Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw a lot of people when we were talking about how Mythoclast could be nerfed. People were talking about bringing in the range again because the range seemed really high for what it was doing. But I think it's interesting that you're doing the change of just ease of use, right? Where it's going to require you to be a bit more on target and a bit more accurate to make use of the weapon.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting on the linear fusion rifle mode thing, like going from 1.1 to 1.05 sounds like an incredibly small change. But when you're talking about aim assist angles, it's massive. Like I think I've said this somewhere else, but like 0.1 degrees, it can actually feel significant. Like if you have the minimum maximum aim assist on a hand cannon, for example, it's like fractions of a degree. So a fairly small percentage change will result in a pretty big field difference.
And it's worth noting that the it now is going to require 3 eliminations instead of 2 to get to that linear fusion rifle mode. So it's going to be a bit, harder to aim the gun, and then you're going to need more kills to even get the linear fusion rifle mode. Is worth pointing out.
Do you think a lot of people are going to be turned off by it with those changes, with the way it feels, or do you think it's still going to be Vex?
Yeah, it's and I'm sure some people will be, but in local playtests, it's still plenty strong. Like you'd probably use it over most exotic auto rifles, and it still melts. Like it's doing the same damage output. It's just a little harder to use.
Right, exactly. And because in linear fusion rifle mode in PvP, it can one-shot headshot supers. Is that something that you guys are comfortable with, or is that something that maybe you'd want to look into in the future in terms of its damage to supers?
I mean, given that you need to get 3 kills without dying to be able to
Yeah.
do that now, we're comfortable with it. I think if it becomes a problem, we'll look at it again, but we don't feel like it's going to be.
Cool.
Yeah, I personally like these changes. I think that it's definitely worth seeing how these play out instead of, hitting the range and hitting the damage and hitting all of these other things and kind of maybe getting it back to the place that it launched in. I think it's I think it's a nice way to say, hey, if you're really good at aiming the gun, you get rewarded for it. And if you're
Yeah.
not, then go use a different gun.
Hmm.
Go use Suros
Yeah.
coming up later.
Man, raid exotics are really hard as well, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
if Vex Mythoclast launched and one person had it and they were just tearing up Crucible with it and no one else could get it, that'd be pretty miserable. I think it's okay to launch like a quest exotic or a season pass exotic pretty hot, but if you do it with raid exotics, it's pretty risky because there isn't a path to acquisition.
Yeah. And some people, like, I think someone in chat said 30 completions. They still don't have it yet. I think there's a lot of people
Yeah.
out there that kind of feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking about raid exotics really quick, and with the Australian theme, um, would it be would Taraba be totally broken if it kept its stacks when you switched weapons? Or do you
Let's
think
find
it's
out.
something that it could exist with that the ability to kind of keep its stacks?
No comment right now.
It's getting
I
a
don't know what
catalyst.
Watts is talking about because she's not using the right slang. It's Taraba.
Taraba.
Whatever you
Sorry.
said.
My bad. It's like
That's
the
fair, Dingham.
Nice.
Don't encourage him, Chris.
Oh dear. Yeah, don't encourage him. Next we have Fighting Lion, which was interesting because it has just infinite ammo, right? When you switch to having primaries having infinite ammo, Fighting Lion was like, hey, yeah, now I'm a grenade launcher with
Yeah.
infinite ammo.
How about that
So
buff?
I thought this change was really interesting because it's not a nerf, because you guys didn't feel like it needed nerfing, but it's kind of just an adjustment to make it make more sense. So could you talk about your changes to Fighting Lion and why you thought it needed those changes?
Yeah, so when we were seeing a lot of complaints about special ammo grenade launchers in particular in Crucible, and so felt sufficiently concerned about Fighting Lion to not want to ship it with just infinite ammo and it reloads fast, because then you can just go fishing around corners and it's super impressive. We actually play tested it quite a lot. Now that it's out in the wild and we've had enough time to see how people react to it there, we think we're okay with you fishing around corners with it, but if you fish and miss, that should cost you something, which is going to be reload speed. And if you land a shot on someone, we want to reward that by letting you get quick follow-ups.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting. So yeah, the changes is it's remove the multi-hit requirement. Dealing any damage will grant the buff. Increase the buff to the reload stat plus 50 to plus 70. And then increase the buff duration to 7 seconds. So it's kind of a buff overall, right? It's just but
or
more of an
sidestep.
adjustment.
Yeah, it's still a little under what it was before Season 15 launch, of course, but it's still infinite ammo, right? Like
Yeah.
We're still not comfortable with just rolling it back completely, but it does at least let you get to faster reload than it ever had before, and plus 70 reload is a massive reload speed bonus that makes a huge difference.
It is.
Yeah.
Now this one, Arbalest. People have been using Arbalest because of particle deconstruction, and now it's getting intrinsic anti-barrier. So when the 30th hits, or not the 30th, when December patch hits and we get the linear fusions are getting buffed, Arbalest is getting intrinsic anti-barrier, I can foresee this being kind of a go-to for GMs, right? Like it's just gonna be it's gonna be real strong. Surely it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I think anything with anti-barrier or with barrier champions in it, it's going to be an obvious choice. And yeah, it's really strong. It will break any shield in the entire game in one hit.
Nice.
That's very nice. Can we use it against Titans through their walls to murder them?
Oh, what it does to a Titan? Well, it doesn't penetrate. You can
Yeah,
break it
Ward
in
of
one hit, I
Dawn.
think.
You imagine.
Time to become an Arbalest main all over again. And next we have another linear fusion rifle with Sleeper Simulant, which is getting an increased mag size from 3 to 4 and increased PvE damage by 6%. So it's going to benefit from the 10% damage buff that we talked about before, and then it's also getting 6% on top of that. Is that right?
Yeah.
So does that mean 16% net, or is it like the 6% is calculated on top of where the 10% total adds up to be?
Yeah, they multiply together.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not going to do it in my head. I'll get it wrong. Someone's got a calculator. Please put it in chat.
So it's not 10 plus 6, and that's the percentage.
No,
Yeah.
it'd be 1.1 times 1.06.
Okay. Yeah.
There's some math class people in here. You guys
Yeah.
you guys can whip out the That seems pretty good. Getting more in the mag and then just more damage on top of more damage. So that could be really fun to use as well.
Yeah, it's a monster. Like, it does massive amounts of damage. Probably even once particle deconstruction goes away, it'll probably be like in the top 2 or 3
Wow.
highest damage
Wow.
in the game.
It's interesting because we don't see a lot of Sleeper Simulant at the moment.
Yeah, that
Even
makes
with
us
the
sad.
even with the mod, yeah, I'd see people choosing to take in a different weapon over Sleeper Simulant.
Yeah, that was kind of the point of the extra little bump, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
sufficiently far ahead compared to a legendary that you'd actually pick it. Like, you'll use your exotic slot for something else and take a legendary if you're doing that.
Also, yes, it's 1,000 Voices' fault because
Mhm.
also fusion rifle also has particle deconstruction.
That was nice to use 1,000 Voices, though. It felt good to use that.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while
Yeah.
since people have used 1,000
It's
Voices.
a fun gun to use, too.
Yeah, you should look
Yeah.
at the usage curve for that. Like, I think you can probably just look it up on Destiny Tracker or something, but it's like way down. Wait, where's my finger? Yeah, way down here, and then it just goes at the start of season 15. It was awesome.
That's great. Now, the next one I'm excited about, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So, Suros Regime is getting a change to its dual mode receiver. So, this is the slower auto rifle version of Suros Regime, and it's getting also just being slow firing auto rifle. It's getting plus 30 range and plus 3 zoom. So, where does this kind of put Suros Regime with other auto rifles in terms of its range?
I think it definitely makes it competitive with other high impact auto rifles, like the range and the zoom combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it super, super rangy. I don't know that it's actually going to like cause a spike in Suros Regime usage, but we're looking at the like, we have the ability to see if you've got selectable perks, what perks everyone's using. Like, oh, 95% of people are using the other ones.
Yeah.
Man, well, why even have that on there? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
it's like, it turns it into a high impact auto rifle. Why aren't people using it? And we looked at the stats and it's like, oh, okay, that's why.
Can this now compete with Mythoclast at range? Like, does it? Because obviously Mythoclast has a ton of range and is an auto rifle. So I'm wondering.
I think
how
it'll
stacks up.
outrange Mythoclast, but Mythoclast has a faster TTK, but it's
Yeah.
got the higher rate of fire.
Interesting. I wonder if it will push people to use it because people haven't used the slower firing Suros for a very long time. I think even in D1 at the end of it, people are using spinning up.
What it really needs is like a hold reload to switch between the modes. That's just it's super, super expensive to make that change. One day we'll get there.
That would be awesome, yeah, because then you could, depending on the map, depending on your positioning, depending on where you need to be on the map, you could change. You could even have it be your go-to auto rifle for like all nightfalls if you wanted to.
It'd actually be great having one weapon that can cover like close and far ranges, and then do whatever you want with your special.
Any chance you could elaborate on that being quote unquote expensive for people who outside the development side to know? Because like a lot of the times when people are giving feedback, they think it's easy to just flip a switch and change something in the game, and adding like a hold to reload. Some people might think, oh, not that difficult, right? But you're saying it's expensive, right? So
if you build it that way to begin with, it's easy. Like we have a ton of weapons that have hold reload to do a thing, right?
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And like when we're building the exotic that way, it's fine. But a lot of the early exotics were built where that selection was in the inspection screen in the weapon, so you'd have to like go in and switch the nodes. Like if you remember, Hardlight was originally that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well, maybe I think. And so we would like to go back and change them, but because they're built completely differently, it's sort of like building a whole new exotic. So it's a sort of as we have time to do it. It's the sort of thing we'd like.
So you have to rebuild the code for that particular exotic, so it almost makes a new Suros.
Yeah, it would be like instead of having the one perk set up, you need like another perk running behind the scenes to manage switching it around. That kind of
Interesting.
thing. Where previously the player would just do that themselves.
That's very interesting. Yeah, so it's basically you're making a new gun, but without having to make new art for it, new art assets. But you're having to recode the gun.
Yeah, it's sort of like there's a bang for buck issue there, right? Like people
Right.
love new exotics. People like it when we go and revisit the old ones to a degree. But I think there needs to be a pretty good reason for us to go do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we have Cryosthesia, which is the stasis sidearm, which it does say in the TWAB that you guys were concerned about shipping it being strong because of the state of stasis at that point. So it's getting some changes, which it's actually some of the bigger changes listed in the TWAB and talking about it. So it's getting removed variable trigger completely. It now fires on trigger press instead of release, which should make it feel more responsive, hopefully. Charge shot moved to special reload, so getting a final blow with the sidearm enables access to the special reload. And once the charge shot is fired, the weapon reverts back to standard sidearm mode, so it does not cost your entire magazine, which is very cool. I like that.
That's
And charge shot now causes an AoE which freezes AI and slows players, but will still freeze on a direct hit. Could you talk about the changes of what you want this gun to be and why you decided to go with these changes specifically and how this is going to kind of help it in PvE and PvP?
Yeah, so this sidearm is sort of a victim of timing. Like we have to plan
Yeah.
weapons sort of 2 seasons ahead of when they're going to come out. And so we knew we were making the sidearm and had it in train before Stasis launched. We had no idea that Stasis was going to blow up the way that it did. So when it came time to actually ship the thing, we were like, should we just ship it in its current form where it's pretty strong in a world where everyone's really salty about Stasis? Like, no, we're not going to do that. And I feel bad for like all the designers who worked on it, because they did a great job on the dev version of it, and then we had to go in and nerf it right before ship, because it would have been super unpleasant in PvP otherwise, right? But yeah, so like this rebuild is going to make it really fun in PvE. Like that AoE freeze is super fun, has a lot of synergy with stasis builds and whatnot as well.
how big is the AoE? Like a Firefly, Dragonfly type of size or something?
Yeah, that kind of a size.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number to hand, but it's
Would
roughly
you
that.
with the AoE freeze, would you be able to like shoot the ground near enemies and you still get the AoE freeze, or does it need to hit the target?
Yeah, you can hit the ground.
Nice.
Everyone, woo!
Yeah, I'm excited about this gun. I'm really excited not to have to reload right after shooting
Yes, that's the thing with the sidearm that you kind of struggle with. It made it feel a little awkward is that
Yeah.
you freeze them and then you have to switch to a special to really make use of that freeze.
Mhm.
And you're just kind of standing there. Whereas,
Yeah.
because you freeze people in PvP, they think they're dead. I'm like, dude, I have to switch weapons. I got to reload my other gun. I got to do so many things before I can kill you. So this is going to make it a lot of fun. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, that's cool.
The charge trigger thing is a little bit like it's a subtle one, but I think that is, for me at least, as exciting as the rest of the changes to it. Like I don't know if you've played Halo and used the plasma pistol, or you've tried using Devil's Ruin or something like that.
Yep.
And something about those weapons just feels slightly off, and it's
Yes.
because the projectile comes out on trigger release.
Mhm.
And so rebuilding the sidearm this way, and like the designer who did it was like really smart about the way that he went about it, because he designed it now in such a way that we don't need the charge trigger, like so we can have it fire on press, which just makes it feel a lot more responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. And for in PvE, if you do shoot the ground for the AoE, that will freeze them if you shoot the ground.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's exciting. That's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to that one.
So how close is that version to where it was in development? Is it like a compromise?
It's pretty different. Like we
Yeah.
had a version that was the charge shot, instead of just being a rapid fire like AoE or anything, it was this big slow moving sphere that would freeze everything in its path.
Whoa.
We didn't go all the way back to that version because that probably would have still been too much.
That would have been nuts.
That would have been nuts.
So what? Hunter's super in a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here, just get that. Put in this one.
That's great. Next we have Leviathan's Breath, which was such an exciting weapon when it came out. You know, this big, heavy, chunky bow. And it kind of never ended up having its day in the sun
Mhm.
type of situation. So this is getting a change to its catalyst, which is granting archers tempo in addition to its other effects.
It's a pretty big change to its DPS because Archer's Tempo takes a big chunk off the draw time. So there's follow-up shots. If you like stun a champion and then you just start laying into it, you can burn it down pretty fast because the damage output is actually pretty good.
It
Mhm.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. This is very interesting. Do you foresee Leviathan's Breath being the boss murdering heavy weapon bow that it dreams to be?
Oh, I'd love to see it. I'd kind of be surprised, particularly in the world where we also buffed the hell out of Sleeper.
That's true.
But it'll at least be viable, and I think in content where you want that unstoppable, like the built-in unstoppable, if I'm remembering correctly, like using that against champions. And because someone's going to ask, it won't do full damage on the shot that stuns the champion. Something we might look at later, but at least the follow-up shots, you'll blow through them.
Cool.
Interesting. And we have Whisper of the Worm, which was king for a long time.
A throwback. A
Many
classic.
years.
Many
Many
times,
games.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this is getting a reduced delay on activating whispered breathing from the catalyst from 2.1 seconds to 1.2 seconds. That's pretty big. That's
Mhm.
a big change. Because you'd be standing there for a while ADSing like any second now, we're
Yeah.
gonna start DPSing. Just wait.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. The white nail magazine refill change is very interesting. So it was taking 3 from the inventory, but now it's pulling 2 from inventory and 1 from thin air. So you're gonna have a lot more uptime with it, and it's getting an increased damage in PvE by 10%.
You guys nervous about?
Yeah, no,
You know?
Not really. I
The
mean,
boss
if
got small heads.
bosses do have small heads, and it does demand precision. And when you compare it to Sleeper, right? Sleeper doesn't have quite the same damage potential, but it doesn't punish misses anywhere near as much. Like if you don't land those 3 shots with Whisper, you're kind of out of luck.
Right.
So we wanted to bring back the reward side of that by increasing the damage and giving you some ammo back. The other part of it was a lot of damage phases are pretty short. So there aren't that many cases in the game now where you have enough time to really sit there for 2.5 seconds before you start doing damage.
Yeah, that makes
Right.
sense. Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of chatter about catalysts, especially because it's included in Whisper. Do you know how it's going to work with people getting access? Because Whispers might come back to the top now. How people access catalysts that are either been vaulted or the activities are no longer available, because it's going to come up with Dead Man's Tale 2 when that gets vaulted. So do you have any insight to how future catalysts will work?
Yeah,
how
the
you
idea
obtain
is
them?
that so like general purpose exotics, their catalysts are just in the activities pool. So the intent for Witch Queen is that all of the currently inaccessible catalysts go there. We would like to do
nice.
something more
You just
custom.
made a lot of people very happy in that
Yeah.
single sentence.
Yeah, that's a big sentence.
You want to say it again? Get the clips ready.
It would actually be awesome to have a specific place that you go to grind out catalysts. But for the moment, at least, activities.
Activities.
Cool.
That's great news.
Yeah, that's really good news. I think I finished my Whisper Catalyst on console and never did it on PC. So I have a couple of those.
I know it's a bit further down, but I guess while we're talking about catalysts, there was
Yeah.
a comment about orb regeneration. Is that something you can give us info on or not yet?
So it's. Let me see. What did we actually say?
You said that the focus on Catalyst being the best benefit is being able to make the
Right.
orb generation, and you want to move
Yeah.
it more towards what it actually does, the Catalyst does, and all that.
Yeah, so the team was feeling like a fair amount of pressure from the community to make catalysts just because people wanted to generate
On the
orbs or
orbs,
get exotics.
right.
Yeah.
We felt like that's not really a good reason. We can solve that in another way. And then
Mm.
like the pressure to make catalysts for everything comes off, and we can do more interesting stuff with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there?
Because I guess people want them for their armor builds, right? Because you need the orbs for maybe your charge with light builds, and
Charge with light.
your
Right.
catalyst doesn't
Mhm.
have it, then you know you can't do it. So it
Yeah.
might be another way to get orbs with exotics that don't have a catalyst yet.
Yeah. The other
Yeah.
part of this was that the orb generation perk takes up like perk budget space on a weapon.
Oh,
Mm.
We will
interesting.
need perk budget space for something else in Rich Queen.
Yeah.
And I know you did speak before about how if there's too many perks, it just breaks the game. So
Yeah,
that's
certain perks just stop working, and it's random which one.
Telesto gets into the engineering
Oh,
room and
God.
Yeah,
starts
Telesto's
messing around with stuff.
like
Pulling out
what to
wires.
unplug.
Telesto's drunk again.
Is there any possibility of the catalyst being split out from the masterwork side of stuff, like a masterworking, exotics or something like that in the future?
Yeah, that's totally a possibility.
Interesting.
Mm,
Cool.
interesting indeed. Yeah, I've always wanted
Indeed.
I've wanted Taraba
Taraba.
to make orbs, because when you get the when you get the super fast firing version of it, you just murder everything. So you'd make a ton of orbs if
Yeah.
it had a catalyst.
But it doesn't. No
Yeah, and
orbs.
also stuff like, imagine anarchy, right? Like you trap a doorway and 100 thrall just run through it. You don't generate any orbs right now. How frustrating is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It does. It makes me sad. It does. Makes me sad. Next we have D.A.R.C.I. Oh, D.A.R.C.I. You remember when people used D.A.R.C.I? It was
Oh,
maybe
yeah. I played Scourge back in the day as well.
So this is getting a reduced flinch, recoil, and accuracy degradation by 50% while personal assist is active. Can you speak on what does that mean to us? What does it mean? Just what does it mean?
Yeah, so D.A.R.C.I
Translate
has
it, please.
this exotic perk, personal assistant, that if you keep your reticle over one target for long enough, you just get a fairly chunky damage buff against them. But in the game right now, the moment your reticle leaves them, that buff drops, and then you have to move back over them, wait for it to power up again, and then you start getting the damage. And we kind of wanted to differentiate Whisper and D.A.R.C.I from each other because they do sort of live in the same area, and they kind of want to eat each other's lunch a bit. So D.A.R.C.I will now be a fair bit easier to use because of all of these changes to its recoil and flinch and whatnot, and the personal assistant change. And Whisper is a bit more about leaning into, you want to really hit those crits.
So if you're a pro PvE gamer, you go with Whisper of the Worm. If you are not, not as good, you can use D.A.R.C.I.
Have you guys considered moving it out of heavy?
Oh yeah, we've talked about that quite a lot.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's a lot of competition in the special slot as well.
For sure,
rifles, like particularly with Cloud Strike. And like we've got some really, really strong legendary snipers, particularly with firing line being back in the purple and whatnot, right? Like we don't want to make an exotic special ammo sniper that is just better than all of the legendaries there, I don't think. And it's actually kind of nice having two snipers in the heavy slot, so at least there's some sort of choice there. It's also like a non-trivial amount of work to do it. So I think like if this doesn't work and everyone still like is leaning away from D.A.R.C.I in particular, it's something that we would re-examine. Like maybe we revert those changes and like bring it down to special ammo sniper levels and put it in the special slot. But we feel like it's at least worth the attempt to make it into a viable heavy ammo sniper.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
It's also getting so the personal assistant perk now has a 1 second delay before deactivating when off target, and it used to be instant. So you're gonna have all of those reduced flinch, recoil, accuracy, all that stuff for a little bit longer.
20% bonus of damage.
Yeah, and like we were talking about those ogres with their tiny little heads. Like
Yeah.
those enemies where you can't reliably keep your reticle right over their head the whole time. Like you won't quite have to do that. Like you'll need to be accurate, but if you lose it for a frame, we're not going to punish you for it anymore.
Overload
That's
captain
good.
dipping around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those jerks.
Yeah, they do move a lot. It's true. I know this is going back a little bit, but when we were talking about the variable trigger change with Cryosthesia, have you guys thought about making a change like that for Devil's Ruin and other weapons that have that? I think it's just Devil's Ruin though.
Yeah, for weapons that you sort of feel like should be single shot but have a charge trigger. We haven't actually talked about it with Devil's Ruin. I think because the charge is so intrinsic to that weapon.
Yeah.
To the point where people kind of barely use the regular fire, right? Like you just run around, particularly now that it's got infinite ammo, right?
It does
Like
have
you used to only
infinite
be
ammo,
able
yeah.
to get 12 charge shots in PvP or something, and now you can have as many as you like.
Hmm.
And I think like it's something that we might look at, but I think there's a much weaker case for making that change for Devil's Ruin than there was for Cryosthesia.
Yeah.
Aside from anything else, like what do? You have to special reload, and now you can charge it, and then you special reload back to go back. Like it'll lose responsiveness in a different way.
That's true. Yeah.
Never
Next
say
up, we
never.
have Malfeasance, which is getting increased explosion damage by 50%. And this was interesting
Nice.
because one, we love explosions.
Yeah.
They're
But
nice.
two, how does that translate to PvP having increased explosion damage?
It's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference in PvP. Like if someone's healing really fast in between shots or something, and then you land that fifth one on the middle, like definitely kill them, even if they've got an overshield or
Right.
something. I think that it's going to make it more viable in PvE. Like that's really the focus.
Yeah.
Nice.
You can use it in Gambit to kill the blockers, the taking damage and more explosions.
Yeah.
Although
Kaboom.
maybe someone will like have a clip where they kill a whole group of people by just killing one person in the middle with Malfeasance, and then the
Yeah.
explosion takes out all the rest. Hope someone does that. Actually, I don't.
Is that
don't
a
know how viable
viable? I was gonna say, is that a viable thing? Because I do like explosions.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try.
I don't know. You try it and let me know.
That sounds fun. I like that. So Dead Man's Tale, which has been a little bit controversial, this change that you guys have done. So I just want you guys, you to talk about the reasoning behind the changes, what you've done, and then we can kind of jump into a different conversation about M&K and controllers and all that stuff.
Yeah. So like, obviously, it was very very hot earlier. So we hit it pretty hard, and its usage is now in a pretty good place on PC. But it really tanked on controller. And so we wanted to bring that back up a bit, but we tried to find a way of doing it that wouldn't impact on mouse and keyboard too much.
Yeah, because the change we have, so there's the increased reticle friction, which of course is fall off distance, which is not an issue on M&K at all. But then the less recoil and improved accuracy has reduced effect on mouse and keyboard. Do you know, is there any way to kind of let us know how much of effect that's going to have on mouse and keyboard? I saw some people in the community a little nervous about any buff to DMT on M&K.
Yes, I'll say firstly to those people, if this becomes a terror in PvP again, we'll probably just branch the tuning completely. It's not something we like to do because it's a lot of work. Like it means effectively duplicating a bunch of stuff for the exotic and then having to maintain both of those. So we only do that where we really have to, like with Last Word, for example.
Yeah. But
yeah, so the magnetism or the friction you mentioned is only on controller anyway. And if you remember the like mouse and keyboard recoil changes from whenever that was.
Yeah.
Season 13, I think. We mentioned that, mouse and keyboard has dramatically lower recoil than controller does. And there's some similar stuff for accuracy in there. So while it does have an impact, like this will be a slight buff to both of those in mouse and keyboard, we feel like it will be way more noticeable in controller.
Right. So with you mentioned Last Word. Last Word's completely separate the tuning for mouse and keyboard and controller. Is that correct?
Right.
Right. Is Last Word, because I saw some comments before, is Last Word performing how you'd want it to for PC? Because it feels like it's probably used. I feel like it's the opposite of DMT. Feels like that's PC versions. Do you know what I mean? Like it's underused on PC and used more on controller, and DMT's the opposite, right?
Yeah, we 100% agree, and we would like to come back and revisit that tuning on Last Word, because it doesn't need to be like it didn't need to be dumpstered quite so much. Like at the time, it was such a
Interesting.
terror that it made sense to like just take it out of contention on mouse and keyboard. But yeah, like it's been that way for long enough. It's we can take another look at it. We might not get to it for Witch Queen, but it's certainly on the list for sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm
Interesting.
glad you talked about that because I hear it all the time with people wanting separate balancing for Last Word specifically for M&K and controller because it's so good on controller, but on M&K people are like it's barely usable. So it's good to know that it kind of does have that system in place already to be balanced separately. And I think M&K users would definitely like for it to be looked at because it was a lot of people's favorite gun in D1, right? So people are wanting to continue using it on PC.
Mhm.
Yeah, makes total sense, and something we would like to. So expect it sometime.
Sometime,
Cool.
but not Witch Queen.
Yeah.
Not Witch Queen.
Are you happy with how the Last Word is on controller, or do you feel it's a bit too strong?
So I think technically it's a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
But if something's too strong and no one's using it, it doesn't really worry me. And its usage isn't that. Its usage is nowhere near high enough for it to be a big concern. But I think a really good player can absolutely terrorize a lobby with it for sure. I don't think a mediocre player can. Yeah, which is the other side of that.
I had a lot of other questions around with DMT random rolls, specifically when you lose presage, how that will work, and do you have any thoughts on these exotics? Because Hawkmoon's in the same boat with random rolls, where you would complete a mission to get a chance at a random roll. Can you give us any thoughts on how that will go forward?
So as with other exotics where their acquisition path has gone away, the season after that happens, there'll be another acquisition path. So for most of the exotics, it's they go up for sale in the kiosk, right? Because Hawkmoon and Dead Man's Tale have random rolls, it'll be a bit different for them. But so that this change won't happen for Witch Queen, but will happen shortly after that.
Right.
And those two in particular, like we'd like to do something a bit more with them. And we have all of these other systems coming into play in Witch Queen, which we could later use to give you that customization of an exotic without it actually being random.
Ooh.
And now blink frantically. Thank you. Just in case people are not watching properly.
Please,
So
no one
just
click that.
yeah, just to say, like the crafting system is also going to be integrated or working with exotics as well.
No
That's
comment
the
at this stage.
blinking Tefty.
No.
That's the blinking Tefty.
On a fair dinkum scale,
Fair dinkum.
how fair is the dinkum?
That's not how you use that phrase.
Good. Correct them. Correct them.
We have a Heir Apparent Catalyst, which is getting reduced damage resistance against players from 75% to 25%. No effect in PvE. I think all of us can just say, yeah, that's good. Because so this was caused by a data error, right? With Heir Apparent. Can you talk to us a bit about that? Because was it supposed to be 25%, but it was actually 75%? Are you also like nerfing it as well as fixing the data error?
Yeah, so we're fixing what looks like a data error. So we did some investigation and came back, and it looks like someone did a multiply by 0.75 instead of minus 0.75 or something like that.
Wow.
So it ended up being like the opposite of what was intended. It was supposed to be a little bit less of a buff than it got in PvE, and instead it was way more of a buff than it got in PvE.
Okay, that makes. I see someone with that shield, and I'm like, just
Yeah,
run
you just turn
away!
around,
Don't
right?
even go near it.
Yeah.
It is pretty scary right now. Yeah,
Marlon
it is weird
laughs
actually that
as
it's
he
not
uses
seeing
it.
more usage. Like I looked up the data for this, and shockingly, it is not the most used machine gun even in PvP. Like
Interesting.
legendary machine guns are ahead of it. Yeah,
I think
was
people just
shocked.
don't know that it's that strong. They see it, they
And
think,
people
oh, it's
complain about it so loudly. How can anyone?
yeah.
know?
I think they know that it's annoying to go up against, but they don't realize how much is in there for that buff.
I will say at least that with a heavy weapon, at least you have the option of contesting the ammo. Like if it
Mhm.
was a special or something, there would be no response.
Next, we have another controversial weapon, which is Lorentz Driver. And this is getting removed ability energy regeneration on picking up a telemetry. And that's the only change it's getting. I think a lot of people didn't know that it did that.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I
part
saw
of the
that.
reason for removing it. We
But
could have just
people-
removed it and not said anything.
It's
Probably
true.
would've.
I don't think many people would have noticed. But I've heard many people say that they would have liked an aim assist reduction on it or something because it feels too easy to use. Do you align with that thought? Is it where you would like it to be? Do you think it could get nerfed or deserves a nerf?
I mean, it's something that we're keeping an eye on. But its aim assist and everything is super, super close to Arbalest, and no one's using Arbalest. So I feel like there's a bit of flavor of the month.
Until now.
Yeah, right.
Arbalest doesn't have the
Yeah.
good suck.
That's the thing.
That's true.
That's
That
the
is
thing
true,
with
yeah.
Lorenz, right? Is that it's very strong and it's pretty easy to use generally
Mm.
once you get used to it. But it's really fun because you hit the big suck and it's a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
sort
then-
of like a giant, birthday party explosion thing. It's good fun.
Exactly,
Yeah, so
yeah.
like I think in the hands of a skilled player, it is super, super nasty. But my experience has been that if something's really, really strong, like has really high potential and is really easy to use, everybody uses it. And like Lorentz Driver's usage just isn't that high.
The
I
data
think
isn't
that-
high for it.
Right. Yeah, and I think if it gets to that point, like we'll absolutely take another look at it. We'd probably do Arbalest at the same time since they are so similar. But
Do you take data from like trials versus general PvP or general Crucible?
yeah, we'll
Well-
look at everything.
Right.
The other thing with Lawrence, and like this is, I think, why it's not super dominant in really high level play, is that yeah, sure, it's got more aim assist than a sniper rifle, but someone who's really good with a sniper rifle will insta kill you while you're still charging up the weapon.
Yeah.
So I think in the hands of super skilled players, it's worse than a sniper rifle.
Yeah,
so there's like this sweet spot there somewhere, right?
Yeah, I've definitely felt that with, when we've been running trials and I use it and then I'm like, this person's a really good sniper. I don't think I can use Lorentz against them
Yeah,
because
can't
they're
challenge.
shooting me right as I peek, whereas I have to charge it or I have to pre-charge and kind of just guess where they are behind the wall. So that does make sense. And it's good to know that you guys can make changes if it starts going up. So if you guys want it to be nerfed, start using it a lot, all the time.
Yeah, we are now staffed to be able to react faster than we were before. So like if something's a
Fascinating.
big problem, we can hit it like within half a season or something. And if it's sort of a medium-sized problem, we can hit it the next season. Whereas before it used to take longer. There's a little bit of a like development pain here, right? Like where by the time a season comes out, we're like weeks away from being locked on the next season. So the window in which
Right.
we can make a big change is really small because we have to playtest anything that's really big. And if we don't do that for long enough, we run the risk of it shipping in a really bad state.
Interesting. Telesto.
Unbelievable. We thought we'd finally done it. Like buried Telesto.
You cut off the
And-
last head of Telesto and suddenly another one popped out.
It was literally 2 hours later.
What is up with Telesto?
Yeah. How much development pain does Telesto legitimately cause for Bungie right now?
It's actually it's not as much as you think because it's sort of it's kind of a canary in the coal mine because what happens with Telesto bolts can happen to all sorts of other objects in the world. Just like Telesto makes it really obvious when something's wrong, and it's mostly an ability lets you do things to Telesto bolts as though they were enemies, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like how we fix it, like normally we don't actually fix that kind of stuff on Telesto. We fix it on the thing which is letting the things Telesto bolts.
So if something happens
The
with
undersourced
Telesto,
problem, yeah.
something happens with Telesto, then there's a chance that it could happen with other things in the game that people are just not aware about.
Yeah, like sometimes that for sure happens.
So
I
think that with
Telesto is
the-
a gameplay tester?
It really is a sentient AI.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, it's
Well,
kind of
we
nice.
don't pay it or anything. So.
Is there a Telesto shrine at Bungie? Is there somewhere where you have to make a sacrifice to Telesto?
There is a thread in like our spam channel, and every time Telesto breaks something, that thread gets necroed and gets a bunch of responses on it.
Then we have Traveler's Chosen, who I know True Vanguard was weeping today as he read these notes. So it's getting it grants 10% ability energy per stack on activation, was previously more generous on low stacks, less generous on high stacks. The average and amount for 10 stacks is unchanged, and it's reduced stacks granted on a Guardian defeat from 3 to 2. I did see some talk on Twitter when True Vanguard was upset about this,
Yeah.
saying that it's because of an ability, just an ability energy kind of change that you guys are doing later down the line.
Yep.
Could you speak on, obviously, I'm assuming you can't give us details on that, but can you speak about how Traveler's Chosen kind of fits into that?
Yeah, so I can talk generally about it, but like you've seen Kevin talk a lot about how he wants to like reduce how much you can use or win with abilities in PvP in particular. So if the abilities team is doing a bunch of work to make that happen, and on the weapon side we're saying, hey, free abilities, have them whenever you like. Like those two things are obviously at odds. So
Right.
if the sandbox overall decides we want to bring this thing down a bit, like everyone who works on sandbox does what they can to make sure that we hit that goal. I do think that like it's another thing where it's something we might revisit later, depending on how it all rolls out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of it is like it's actually sort of confusing how it would give ability energy. Like it like super front loaded the amount of energy you got on low stacks, and now it's just like straight linear. Like oh, you just 10% ability energy a stack. Like that's easy to understand.
So is that the actual percentage that you're getting per stack with the ability, 10%? Oh, that's a lot easier to understand because you got used to when in your ability recharge and how many stacks you would need to do it, but it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. It wasn't like you couldn't quantify it, right? You couldn't say, "Oh, I'm definitely going to get 20% now that I'm at 2." So that's a good change for clarity.
Yeah.
For perks, we have Adrenaline Junkie, which is what we were teased that Adrenaline Junkie was getting buffed and to not delete your Adrenaline Junkie rolls. And essentially, the best way to explain it is that it's Grenade Buckler, right? Instead of Swashbuckler.
Yeah, that is the development name. So if you've got one of those sweet demolitionist adrenaline junkie rolls, that's going to be pretty good.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Deleted so many.
That's part of why the community team telegraphed that so far in advance. Like, when was that? A month ago?
It was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, and it was because like everyone knew that they were just deleting all of these rolls and we were buffing it.
Yeah, so basically you get a grenade elimination and you get your stacks on the weapon to ×5 immediately.
Yep.
Same as Swashbuckler.
Yeah,
Nice.
and it wasn't mentioned in the patch notes, but it's keeping the handling buff that it would previously grant.
Oh,
so that
very
part
nice.
of it is unchanged.
Cool.
That's gonna be might actually be like a genuinely sought after perk instead of just that's very interesting.
I think it's going to be at least competitive with Swashbuckler, right? Like those two things are going to be very similar.
So I love using Bottom Tree Dawnblade at the moment, and that just does massive explosions and burning and stuff. So using Adrenaline Junkie and Demolitionist and Bottom Tree Dawnblade sounds fun.
Sounds good.
Fun. Next we have Vorpal, which is getting a bit of a change. So it did do 15% bonus damage against all targets, right? And now it's doing 10% on heavy, 15% on special, and 20% on primary. And then it's no change to damage versus players in super.
Right.
So Vorpal DMT is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, that's going to be
better.
Great in PvE, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys happy about the Vorpal change?
Yeah, it's another one of those things I end up deleting a bunch of weapons with. But yeah.
Will you now want to use double primary for the double Vorpal damage?
Interesting. I would consider it for sure.
Okay.
I feel like people are still going to mostly want it on specials. So maybe run
Mhm.
like a primary and a special
Yeah.
both with Vorpal or something like that. Because specials are unchanged and 15% isn't that much lower than 20.
Right. Yeah. We're also getting a change to Whirlwind Blade, which is increasing number of stacks needed to hit maximum damage from 5 to 10. So this is just a change around like Whirlwind Blade being the best sword damage perk, right? It's kind of
Yep.
the same with like we said with Vorpal, where it's like, oh, I have Vorpal on my heavy. Well, of course I'm going to use that. So is this
Mhm.
more of a change to kind of have people seek out other perks or maybe think about using other perks besides Whirlwind?
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those perks where it's such a clear, obvious choice. We're not going to go and like buff everything else up to make it that easy to use. But we did want it to still have a place like for sustained damage, and hopefully you'll go for another perk if you're trying to do burst.
Nice.
Okay, so do you foresee that being the case where it's still going to be a viable thing for sustained damage, but just not for burst?
Yeah. So like it's still strong against like bosses with long damage phases.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
And then we have Pulse Monitor, where it's changed the threshold for activation from 90% health to 30% shield. So
Hmm.
this is apparently going to require much less damage to trigger, which that is quite a big difference. Can you talk about that? 90% health, 30% shield is
Yeah.
quite a change.
Yeah, we keep trying to make Pulse Monitor happen. Maybe this is finally the change. But yeah, so I think the problem is that Pulse Monitor feels like it's activating on a fail state, and no one really likes that. Like it's I have to be
Right.
already losing, right? But like there are plenty of fights in PvP where if you're on low shields, you can still easily win.
Mhm.
So having it's sort of like Eye of the Storm is a really strong perk, even though that
Yep.
requires you to take damage, and we think this puts Pulse Monitor in kind of a similar place to that.
Nice. Yeah, I have it on my
We'll see, though.
Gambit, my Gambit Scout currently. And
Oh, nice.
yeah.
I feel like this is going to be pretty good. You know, like in PvP, having the 30% shield instead of 90% health
Mhm.
feels like that could be a very usable perk.
Yeah, I would notice that for sure because I notice it in PvP when it kicks in. I get like I'm basically one shot and the pulse monitor kicks in. I'm like, oh, nice. So I would definitely notice it with that scout.
Yeah, for sure. Now quick access sling. Can I just hand this over to you, Chris? Because it's a lot of math. It's a lot of
Sure.
numbers.
Yeah, so I mean, Quick Access Sling is basically the same perk as Swap Mag, which was like a legendary perk that rolled on some Trials of the Nine weapons. If anyone
Mhm.
remembers. But the idea that wasn't like it never rolled on a grenade launcher or a bow back then. It was on like hand cannons and things. But the idea was you empty your primary, and you're like, shit, I've got to swap quickly, and it would let you swap incredibly fast. Like it would buff your handling with all of your equipped weapons a huge amount. But the result was once we started allowing you to put it on grenade launchers and bows, that's all people used it on. Like if you look at the usage for that mod, it's like 95% grenade launchers and bows. And like there's like people that are fairly divided on whether that's a good thing or not. But we feel like we would prefer you to have to build into that kind of fast swap speed. So the
Interesting.
other half of this change is now you can put it on anything. Like if you feel like your sniper rifle is swapping a little bit slow, you can put Quick Access Sling on that, and now that'll equip faster.
Interesting. We were literally last week talking about that, about how there's now like a build that people just generally go for, and the quick swap is basically one of the like the go-to, like you must have for certain types of builds. And we were curious actually if that was like you guys like that intention where there is like a 90% build towards target for how builds feel currently.
I think like the general area, the way we're moving is we like that you can get these like super fast swaps or other like a lot of other sort of really strong effects.
Mhm.
But we don't like you to only have to like equip one mod or have one perk or have one subclass thing to get there. We want you to have to build into it a little bit more, like put some effort in. And then if you get there, great.
Have you guys ever considered I'm sure you've considered, but is there any possibility of having in-game loadouts coming in the future for
We would
these
love
things?
to do
Because
it,
like,
honestly. Yeah, like it's
like
it's a
standing all
frequent
those up.
topic.
Yeah, standing all
Yeah.
those up, and then it's like that's your build. Well, sometimes you want to go to a GM or play PvP, and it's very different stuff that you
Yeah.
would like to use some of those same pieces of gear. You have to go in
Yeah.
and remember each mod that you want to swap out.
Yeah, and it is something we talk about a lot internally.
Mhm.
So, like, I would for sure expect to see something in the relatively near future.
Cool.
This might be a bit cheeky,
that's
and you
good.
can say no to it. What would be your dream? What would be the dream, like, of having some system like that? Would it be like you build a loadout and you just click a button and it just swaps all your stuff for it? So, you know, you're in the middle of a match, trials match, like, oh crap, I've got to switch to shotgun now. And you just click, here's my shotgun build, and it swaps your weapon mods, your armor mods all around.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be able to just have multiple loadouts and you just click a button and it equips everything, it sockets all the mods, like does all that stuff. That would
Yeah.
be
Right.
great.
That way, if you had a
But-
magic wand, you'd be like, bang, and that
Yeah.
would be done. Right.
Do that in a heartbeat. And with the
Right.
same magic wand, I would give you locked loadouts in trials. So you can't just
Ooh.
switch it.
Oh.
Oh,
Why you be like
Actually,
this
it bums me out a bit that like you can run with a piece of exotic armor for most of a match, and then when your super's ready, just quickly swap to another one. Like that's sort of not
for? Right.
Yeah.
it's not super healthy. This is my opinion, right? Like I wouldn't expect anything necessarily.
Is it
to
mainly
change
the
about it.
exotic switch? Is that the reason why you don't like swapping gear in trials?
I think that exotic armor is the like the most egregious case of it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But like
Swapping,
personally,
yeah.
I like people coming up with team builds and then if they're not working, not being able to switch them on the fly, but like having to wait in between rounds or something like that.
Interesting.
Again, my opinion. You asked. This isn't something.
So loadouts in game is a thing that hopefully coming soon-ish.
Yeah, we would love to do it, and failing that, there are other options as well. There are other ways in which we could make doing those swaps easier.
Nice. Just so everyone
Very
is on
nice.
the same page, though, that is listening, this is obviously not coming for Witch Queen by any means, right?
This is all hypothetical dream.
Still in
Magic wand
development.
stuff.
You guys would like to see this come down the road, and you are thinking about it, right? Yeah.
I mean, imagine for a moment how much UI time it takes to build a crafting system,
Yeah.
and how little other UI time we're going to get for Witch Queen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And next we have an accessibility option, which is super cool. Really glad this is being added. So this is full auto retrofit. So you're adding a full auto retrofit weapon mod that enables full auto while the trigger is held, usable on legendary hand cannons, sidearms, scout rifles, and pulse rifles. And this is unlocked default for everyone.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So,
So we've
Great.
seen a lot of requests for this, right? Like,
Yeah.
pops up in Reddit all the time. People talk about it on Twitter, and like some folks on the weapons team noticed this and decided to kind of, skunkworks get something in to try and like serve that need at least a little bit. But then since then we've talked to other teams and we actually are going to get a system setting for it.
Nice.
okay.
Right.
Exact shape of that TBD. Would like to, I think, hear from the community on what form they would like that to take, because there are a whole lot of ways where you could do it. Like you probably wouldn't just say, "Oh, every weapon in my inventory is now full auto," right? Like you'd want some sort of control over which weapons get it and which don't. But anyway, that won't be until post Witch Queen, but not long post, I think.
Okay. And with full auto, the perk being on guns, do you foresee changing things with that perk, with that being an actual option put into the game?
Yeah, we're going to stop putting it on guns. Yeah, we're not going to go in and change the perk on people's existing guns, because anytime we go and change something on people's existing guns, we run the risk of wrecking them. Like there have been a couple
Right.
of cases where we've tried to do that and it's gone wrong. So we try not to do that where possible. But yeah, like we won't be having that on. Let's see, when did we stop putting it on stuff? Maybe 30th. But yeah, and certainly no new weapons or reissued weapons. We'll have it
Like
post
my
that
Gambit Scout
Fields
Rifle.
Trust Lord. Right.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, with
Well,
the
maybe not the
full-
Gambit Scout Rifle, because that's not a new weapon, right?
It
Yeah.
is a new weapon. It is.
It's new right now, but it won't be by the time the
Yeah.
mod lands.
That's true. And for clarification, this full auto retrofit mod, it's taking the place of other mods, so like you choose that over having, targeting adjuster or Icarus, etc.
Yeah. So at the moment, there is a trade-off against other mods. That's not what we want, right? But there wasn't like this is the version that we can get into your hands ASAP. It's
Okay.
not the
Right.
version that we want.
And then you're planning on a system one where you could just tick a box somewhere and it will.
Yeah,
add it,
you go
right?
into the options menu and
Right.
and you'll set it there somewhere probably.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's really good.
Cool.
I think that is it for the specific weapon changes. There were some more conversations about exotic catalyst, which we touched on with it being driven by orbs instead of what it can add to the weapon. Weapon differentiation. It was also talked about. Yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to add to any of the patch notes in the TWAB that you'd like to give more clarification on or more details?
So, like, we approach it this way. So, on the weapons team, we make an awful lot of adaptive hand cannons. Like, if you look at how many adaptive hand cannons are in the game, it's getting harder and harder to make them feel different from each other. It's like we only have so many perks, and we only have so many damage types. Like, we've already got multiple kinetics. What we would like is for you to care about where that gun came from, and for that to provide a gameplay difference.
Hmm.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
this is tying into weapon crafting potentially with Witch Queen.
I don't think it needs to be locked to weapon
Okay.
crafting.
Yeah, because like I find so as a Destiny player from back in D1 and all that, like I do notice that when I see similar archetypes and they feel same-ish, there's definitely less desire for me to go and get the various versions of it and all that. So I would like to see that in the game where, just because they are potentially the same archetype and the same flavor, there's a in-game reason that I'd really want that particular gun that might have an effect on my gameplay. If it comes from the raid or comes from PvP or something like that.
Yeah, I particularly like, as a long-time Destiny player myself, I particularly liked how in year one, a Suros hand cannon felt different from a Hake hand cannon, like these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But that was done by like just limiting what perks could appear on them. And as soon as we put random rolls in and we had like 6 perks in each column, it became basically impossible to let the sources have any sort of identity.
Yeah, they kind of homogenized their identities. Yeah. Interesting. Is there anything that you could tell us about weapon crafting that's coming? Or is it locked under a lid at the moment with details?
Well, I can say, having played with it myself, that it is like the ultimate form of player self-expression in Destiny. Like being able to customize something as much as you want, and
Will
get
there
exactly
be
the thing that you want on like in a deterministic way. I think players are really good to dig.
Is it going to be customized? Is there going to be cosmetic customization?
No comment.
No comment. Got it.
Fair dinkum.
Fair dinkum. That's very exciting. I've been,
Do you think
yeah, go for
weapon
it.
crafting is going to affect your role when people can determine exact role that they're going to get? Do you think that's going to change how you think about weapon perks, weapon mods? Because a meta will form, right? Or it'll be more common, or things might be more common as soon as a combination is discovered. So how do you know how that, have you thought about how that might affect current work?
Yeah, and it runs the risk of people figuring out what the best possible version of a weapon is, and everyone just going and building exactly that thing.
Right.
Like PvP becoming completely homogenous. But I think we have some other tools to try and address that. But the hope is that there's enough variation in there that will really allow you to build into your particular play style.
Yeah.
The hope is that people want different things out of a weapon, and so they go for different things. But, like as soon as a streamer says this is the best possible thing, a lot of people go for it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, have you as you guys have been creating Destiny for a while now, it seems like you've been dialing in more on making things specific for different playstyles and different roles. Are you creating more things with Witch Queen and beyond that kind of dial in on that rather than just, damage perk good, this perk bad. It's more
Mm.
so about a specific role that someone wants to play.
Yeah, 100%. And like we've talked about this a little bit, right? Like when
Yeah.
we touched quick draw, we've said something to the effect of, "Hey, we like that you want to be able to swap your weapons quickly. We don't like that all it takes is a single perk for you to be able to do that."
Right.
So you should for sure expect to see more ways of achieving play styles, like also all sorts of different play styles, right? Like quick swapping ones or like run and gun ones. Yeah, there's a ton of variety of perks coming in Witch Queen. There are a lot of perks, actually.
So
Very
good,
exciting.
kind of follow up ish type of thing with weapon crafting stuff. Are you guys happy with the way Armor 2.0 has turned out, or do you feel like there's still quite a bit of room for change, evolution? You know, like is that under being tinkered, or are you guys happy where things have fallen with it?
I can say that the armor team is always like improving the like player experience of the armor system season over season. Like even stuff like all primary weapons are now infinite ammo. Like suddenly that stripped out 10 mods that you never really cared about that much anyway.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that sort of simplification will continue to happen. I can't speak to the specifics. Like you should get someone from the armor team on to talk
For
about
sure.
it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd love to.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we'd love to. I did see
Yep.
a question in chat I'd like to clarify really quickly. With Mythoclast linear fusion shot, when it's in that mode, does that receive the overall global linear rifle buff?
I believe it does. Yeah, I couldn't be 100% sure on that. Yeah, my memory is that it does.
Interesting.
So it's
We did get a lot
potentially
of
a very strong
questions.
choice.
We got a lot of questions on Twitter too. Do you have time to answer a few of those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Drewski asked, there was mention of not branching out the balancing between controller and mouse, keyboard, and context and DMT changes. Is that a positive or a negative? Why do some weapons, like the last word, have separate balancing and many others don't? I guess you kind of answered this already.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak a little bit more about it. Like, I think we don't like doing double the work where we can avoid it. Like, we're still
That's fair.
like we've grown a fair
Yeah.
bit, but we're still a pretty small team. And would you rather have twice as many weapons or like custom tuned, like in both modes for the like half the number of weapons kind of thing? We also like Sandbox is generally on record as saying your Guardian is your Guardian, your guns are your guns, no matter what mode you're playing in. And we don't want to be in a place where they feel radically different. And it'd be easy to go there if we started just branching every single weapon. So we are open to branching where it's genuinely necessary, but prefer not to unless it is. And hey, maybe Dead Man's Tale ends up being in that place, in which case we'll do it.
Bit of a last ditch resort type of thing.
Yeah, I think mostly we can get to get the desired result through tuning without having to branch. Like branching either by input method or by playlist or whatever, right?
Matt said, Chris, are the bullet holes, tracer rounds, and bullet trails of weapons actually representative of what's going on behind the scenes with regards to hit registration, or are they visual flourishes?
They are representative, yeah. As far as I know, I can't be 100% sure that they are representative in the same way for everyone over the network, but like they will tell you where your shots are going for sure.
So the shots coming out of your gun that you're seeing, that's representative, but people who are receiving it halfway around the world could be an approximation.
Yeah, I'm just not sure which parts of that stuff is networked and which is client
Right.
side.
Interesting.
Sam Moss says, I've got a friend who's worried about making the game feel different with the accessibility changes of full auto. What is in place to make sure it doesn't affect the gunplay too much? Basically, what's in place to keep it from making full auto best in PvP?
This is an interesting one. It's like we had a little bit of concern about this initially, but then digging into it a bit more, we realized we shouldn't be gatekeeping success in Crucible based on who can pull the trigger the fastest. Like, if someone can pull theirs at like 360 rounds a minute, right? Does that really mean that they should be better at PvP than someone who like doesn't have that amount of dexterity but is otherwise an excellent player? I don't think it's a very good measure of skill, basically. And I think that's sort of the consensus on Sandbox. And internally, everyone's just excited about it, right? Like a lot of people have requested this.
Yeah, definitely. There's been
Mhm.
a lot of people who stray away from, pulse rifles, hand cannons, scout rifles because they can't have them full auto and they kind of need them to be. So I think it's more important that the accessibility is there for people to enjoy all the weapons and not just auto rifles.
Yeah.
That's why I don't play. I make jokes about scout rifles all the time, but that's really why I don't play them because it literally just causes like almost a tendonitis kind of effect in my trigger finger when I'm using a controller. Like it literally hurts my hand to do it. But with full auto, like you just holding it down, it's not pain anymore. It's just cowardice.
Interestingly, I have that problem, but on mouse and keyboard. Like I find repetitively tapping the left mouse button in Grandmasters with Hung Jury or something, just really fatiguing on my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Flared up carpal tunnel for me. I had to stop using
God.
mouse and keyboard for that because of all the clicking. And I was like, oh my God, my index fingers and flamed up.
Oddly, hand cannons don't do it to me, but scout rifles do. It's weird. You'd
Bows
think
do
it'd
it
be
to
the
me.
exact same.
Weird.
Bows?
Yeah.
Interesting.
We're old.
DMG04 says, I thought we banned this guy. Didn't we
Yeah,
ban
who's
him?
that guy?
I don't know. Hey, Proctor, big fan. I have a question for you. Who's your favorite CM between Cosmo and DMG, and why is it DMG?
You know what? Like Cosmo and DMG have been at the company for ages. I wasn't around when they were hired. I didn't get to sign off on them being hired. I personally like our new
Like a
CMs.
redo on that?
Yeah, who would you unhire?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk about unhiring people. That's not very nice. But like, I think
That's
Sam
not
and
fair
Liana-
dinkum, Mylan. Not fair dinkum.
Sam and Liana are great. I was in both of their interviews, and they're top notch, and they're now my favorites.
Nice.
Nice.
Joseph Rizzo has a lot of numbers in his question. I'm going to attempt to read this.
Okay.
Can you clarify? Functionality changed was plus 100 handling, 0.9 ready stow aim down sights time. I think this was in regard to he just wants
It's
clarification
Quick
on
access sling, right?
yeah.
On if the handling is going away, I think is what the clarification was.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes, it is. The only thing that quick access sling will do now is like 0.9 times ready and stow speed on your current weapon.
Hi says, can we please get an update on the Whisper and Outbreak Catalyst being acquired again? It's been over a year now since we did get an update.
You did.
we
Pretty
talked
damn
about that.
good one.
Random drop
Yeah.
somewhere.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
But we're not going to
Activities.
repeat it for you. You're going to have to listen to the whole fucking episode to hear it. How about that?
No timestamps.
What are those?
Yeah. If someone in the YouTube
don't talk about
comments might do
timestamp.
them for us. We don't.
Bottle says, first, welcome Chris Proctor. Thank you for all the hard work in making yourself available to DCP community at large. Has there been any talk to buff the machine gun since there's almost no talk of them in the TWAB? Oh, and please increase vault space.
I mean, we buffed machine guns 20% in season 15. I think it's premature to buff them again because particle deconstruction is sucking all the air out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in Witch Queen, like where you've got this weapon with just a ridiculously large amount of ammo and really good damage granularity, there actually may be a place for it. I think if it turns out that people still don't want to run them, then we'd look at them again, but definitely not before Witch Queen.
Mad Geek says, is there a technical reason why you cannot raise the power cap on some previously capped pinnacle weapons that never broke the game, such as Oxygen SR3?
So there's a couple of things here. Like if you're going to do sunsetting, you should be absolutely consistent about it, right? Like you don't say, hey, we're sunsetting things and then selectively unsunset a couple of them later. Like that's kind of a shitty thing to do, even though you can acquire them from the kiosk in this particular case. The other thing is that, and you've seen us like do this in the past, we don't like having legendary weapons that have completely custom perks that don't roll anywhere else. Like it's the same amount of work to make those perks as any other legendaries, but we get way less bang for buck.
Right.
And so we'd prefer to have like what we're now calling pursuit weapons that can roll, unique perk combinations. That's that sort of thing, right? Like Salvage's Salvo, that can roll chain reaction, which is not something that breach grenade launchers can get in general. It's maybe actually an opportunity to talk about pursuit weapons in general and how the philosophy differs compared to pinnacle weapons. Like for pinnacle weapons, they were supposed to be this aspirational thing, right? Like you were great at Crucible and you got your Luna's Howl. Like I remember when I got mine and that was great, and then it was nerfed the next week, and that was great as well. But what we want for them now is they're a bit of a slog to get. Like you feel like you've earned something when you do it, but we don't want you to give you the best possible version of that weapon. When you get it, we want it to be like a solid baseline weapon for an activity. So you get a D.A.R.C.I, that's a great sniper rifle. There are better sniper rifles, but if you just want a good sniper rifle, you can just go and get that, and it's exactly that thing. And what we've started doing, and I'm not sure whether people have really noticed this, is when we bring out a pursuit weapon at the same season, we'll ship another weapon in the same archetype that can roll that combination and better combinations. So like we shipped Null Composure, and in the same season we shipped Plug 1, which can also get Reservoir Burst, Feeding Frenzy, but you have more options in the left column, for example. And the same thing with Ascendancy and Explosive Light, right? Like Hothead can roll Explosive Light as well, but has some interesting perk options in the left column. I think that was maybe not quite as strong because Ascendancy is precision and has free tracking, but like that's generally the philosophy, right? Like we want you to get a decent weapon, but then you can grind a much better version of that if you want to.
Yeah. There's a guarantee way to get a version of it, basically, that's relatively competitive, but you could go the extra distance to get something better.
Exactly.
Nice.
Hey Blaze says, hi DCP crew and Chris. Question for Chris. Without giving too much away, what can we expect from the glaive weapon type and its viability in low-end PvE, high-end PvE, and the Crucible? Thank you and the Sandbox team for the hard work you do. Can I have a glaive today to test this out?
Sure, come along, sign an NDA.
Okay.
We have an
You
open
raise
weapon
my-
design position if you want a shortcut to it. Yeah, so the glaive is a pretty strong weapon. Like they're all energy slot and they're all special ammo, right? So they're not going to be the primary thing that you use. You'll use a primary for that. But yeah, they are very viable in PvE because of the shield. Like you can do some pretty wild things with the glaive that you just can't do with any other weapon. Like you can run in, someone's like died in a really stupid place out in the open. You can run in, pop your glaive shield, and res them fairly safely.
Wow.
Which otherwise you would need a Titan bubble or something to do, right?
Wow.
Sorry,
is
what's
that-
a glaive shield?
Is that also the case in like GMs with how much damage you take? Would you be able to use a glaive shield for that?
I mean, the tuning is a work in progress, and we don't
Okay.
want it to ship such that this is mandatory in all activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is that it should absolutely be viable in GMs. And we would say that we've failed at making a good glaive if it's not.
Wow.
As far as the other modes, like they're super fun in other modes, but you don't.
Yeah, the shield? I'm still.
So I got a question. You said glaive shield, and I don't know if I'm being dumb here.
Uh-oh. Didn't we mention that yet? Shit. Yeah, so glaives can project a shield kind of like swords can, but you're not slowed down to the same degree. This is actually shown in the Witch Queen reveal trailer. I guess you weren't watching.
It's in the trailer. You just didn't pay attention. We're not breaking any
Sorry.
rules.
I didn't-
Everything's fine.
Didn't connect it.
There's
I
no
didn't connect
rules
the dots.
broken
That's
here.
all. Now I'm even more excited to use a glaive.
Okay.
But yeah, they're deliberately being tuned such that they're decent options in PvP, but they're not going to be amazing options. Like we definitely do not want a glaive PvP meta.
You don't want them replacing Titan shields, right?
Right.
Yeah. So makes sense. But I'm looking forward to my
Can we have
hunter.
a mode which is just glaive only, and we can all run into battle pretending like it's, I don't know,
I'm
medieval
excited.
times.
I'm excited
what
to
I
finally be
personally
on my
want
hunter
is,
again.
like you put on your Dreaming City armor, and you have a glaive and a bow and a sword, and you go like full medieval.
Yes.
Kara,
sounds awesome.
Kara hunting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
like
you heard it
Monster
here.
Hunter, but in Destiny and with all the medieval type weapons. Yes, I'd like that, please.
Friendly awesome dude man said, after the somewhat successful error allowing 12-man raids earlier this year, do you think we will see something similar in Witch Queen or beyond? Next gen hardware can surely handle this.
I mean, that's more an activities design question. Like I personally, I think like I really like 3-person activities. Like I think they could be the most tightly tuned and the most challenging without it getting really sloppy. That said, like there's definitely more 6-person activities coming. And is there a 9? I'm not sure actually. But like, there's for sure that sort of stuff on the horizon. Like we like that as well. It would actually be really cool to have like a 12-person raid. I don't know that particular one is really viable. And even if it was, like it would be super hard to balance.
Sounds like a lot of it gets kind of tossed around, right? Like there's a lot of options that you guys investigate, and it's definitely not like a deal breaker, right? If it's beyond a certain size.
Almost everything that someone suggests has been discussed internally at the studio.
Very cool. Yeah.
Zaloman says, question for Chris. I appreciate you all and the hard work you put into Destiny. If you had to remove one archetype of weapon from Destiny, what would it be and why? Can't say Telesto.
Oh God. Which subset of the community am I going to really
Which grenade launcher?
And I would personally probably remove shotguns.
Mm.
Just because they're such a go-to option. They're in every game, and there are more interesting weapons that players could use instead.
True.
I'm not doing that. I'm just answering the question.
You heard it here. Shotguns are going to get deleted.
Yeah. I got a follow-up question on that. How annoying was Mountaintop to deal with when it came to sandbox design balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we dug into it a lot and really analyzed what the issues with it were, and looked at read a lot of Reddit posts and Twitter and like all of this kind of thing, and identified what the key pain points with the weapon were. And I think that generally, once you can identify those, it's reasonably straightforward to adjust something so that it works. And I think the version of Mountaintop that's in the game right now would probably not be broken if it wasn't Sunset. It's still kind of a special ammo rocket launcher, so it's still probably oppressive, but I don't think it would be like anywhere near as nasty as it was.
Interesting.
The Omega 222 says, for Chris, how big is the team dedicated to keeping Telesto locked up in its cage?
Not big enough because it keeps getting out.
That's very true.
Yeah, but basically on Telesto, we have one designer whose mission it is to fix Telesto.
Oh, poor guy. Blandon McBlanderson says, which NPC in the tower would you trust the most to get you to the airport on time if you needed someone to drive you there?
I was Zavala. Super dependable. Kind of
Dependable.
He's going to obey the speed limit, though.
I was going to say, he goes the speed limit.
Yeah, but he's got dad vibes, so you're going to leave like 4 hours before you have to be there.
That's true, right?
At the airport for 3.5.
That's true.
Hey, what if you get Banshee to drive you and he forgets what he's doing halfway through and goes somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that.
I think a core is going to get you on there in time. It's going to be fun on the way.
Oh, yeah. That's fair.
I got a quick question for a lot of times we have to answer which exotic we want to bring back from D1. I'm curious for you, Chris, which exotic would you like to see come back from D1?
For me, probably Tlaloc. Like that was a really cool weapon.
Yes.
I think though, for the most part, we've brought back the exotics that they want to. I think as we bring raids back, we'll bring back the exotics from those raids. And we've got 1 or 2 surprises coming post Witch Queen. Okay. But I think that it serves us much better to make new weapons, because anytime we bring back a D1 exotic, people expect it to be like its D1 version. And like look at how much Hawkmoon changed, right? We just couldn't have brought that back in its original form.
How nervous are you for Galahorn and 30th anniversary?
Oh man, I'm so excited for people to find out what that does. It's great, and it's great.
I tried to bait him. We didn't get it.
Yeah, it's great in a way that won't mean it's mandatory for raids.
It's great in a way, but it won't be mandatory for raids. Okay, so we're not going to see must-have Galahorn, or we probably will, but you won't need to really.
You won't try and go into a raid with 6 Galahorns. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Does this mean that Dreg's Promise is coming back?
It does not mean that.
One day.
That was the most gentle no.
One day I'm gonna ask
Drake-
and someone's gonna go,
Drake's
yeah,
what?
actually, yeah.
I mean, we have some like cool
Oh my God.
primary ammo weapons with like really fun homing projectiles coming in the near future. We do not have Drake's Promise. I think like Drake's Promise wouldn't really be an exotic in Destiny 2, right? Like it doesn't do anything interesting enough to warrant it.
Now
Have
you're
to
hurting
be,
Watt's
like, a-
feelings.
You just
exotic
broke
You're
stupid
actually
Now
one.
hurting
you're
Watts
just
right now.
being not very fair dinkum.
You better watch your back.
I don't feel like an Australian would say that. Like, Mylan, have you ever heard anyone say that's not very fair, dinkum?
I've been trying to teach them, and we had a whole week of them using Australian slang incorrectly.
Yeah.
It was glorious.
We're still new to this. We're trying.
We should listen to Destiny Down Under some more.
There you go. Pluggo.
XX420 No Scopes XX says if you were holding Tess with one hand over a cliff and the Cryptarch in the other hand, but you had to use two hands to pull one up, who would you pull up?
Can I just drop both of them?
Yes.
That's
that is
fair answer.
absolutely. That's
dropping
fair
them
dinkum.
like a
Drop 'em both, fair
dropping them
dinkum.
like a drop bear. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Puneet Sharma says no changes to 140 hand cannons. Any changes there? Hand cannons have been dominant weapon type for years now.
Like this goes back to like the goal of balancing. And the goal is not for everything to have equal usage. It's okay that hand cannons are used more than other stuff because other stuff is viable. You can take a pulse rifle or a sidearm or an auto rifle or a submachine gun and be successful with it in Crucible. There are probably a handful of weapons that you can't, and we'll try and address those. But I don't think we'll get there by bringing hand cannons down.
Interesting.
Mildew Department Landlord says, will we be able to turn off full auto trigger system?
The mod or
Wouldn't you just not equip it?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you can choose not to put the mod on. We won't have a way, like for anything that's got full auto built in, we will not for now have a way of turning that off. My expectation would be that you just stop using legendaries that have that perk, and you get a different one, which doesn't, once we put the setting in. I also think that once we put the setting in the settings menu, we might go back to all of the exotics that have that as a perk and give them a real perk.
Does that mean the future?
Negralo.
Oh, does that mean future like legendaries are not going to roll with full auto then?
Correct.
Or in their frame and stuff, in their archetype?
I think we'd probably keep like the rapid fire scouts full auto and that kind of thing.
So that's like the outlier.
Oh, I'm seeing
Yeah.
chat say that they think that question is about Travelers Chosen. Does that make more sense?
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
When we get to having the setting for full auto, we would replace full auto with something else on Traveler's Chosen for sure.
Okay.
And like Vigilance Wing and whatever other exotics have that, because it's not a real perk at that point.
It makes sense to do it
Interesting.
on exotics, right? Because it's, with a legendary, you can maybe go and farm that same legendary weapon that doesn't have full auto on it, and you don't risk breaking things immensely with all the random rolls that have full auto on them. But with exotics, it's, obviously they need to have a not useless perk.
Yeah, like it's actually safe and easy to change a trait perk that's on an exotic catalyst. We can do that very safely, whereas we can't do it safely on legendaries. It's a ton of work and it may not go well.
Negralo says, why do things like ghost bullets and flinch exist? These are pretty frustrating mechanics that sometimes make gunfights feel like RNG.
I think that we've addressed most of the ghost bullet stuff. I think there are still complaints right now about ghost bullets on sidearms, but I think that the hit scan projectile thing will largely address those. And most of the rest of them, I think, are like accuracy, like you're firing too fast or something like that. If people have really good examples of like, this is clearly a ghost bullet, please send them our way. This is something we'd like to look at. For Flinch, Flinch serves a purpose in the game. We do, in Sandbox, talk a fair amount about what if we replaced Flinch with something else? Or, what if we changed how recoil works and this kind of thing. So it's certainly possible that we'll come back and change that, but we don't have anything specific to talk about.
IMGP Hash says he's got 2 questions. Do shotguns need Icarus on them, or is that a wasted mod?
I wouldn't put Icarus on a shotgun, personally, because the only thing that Icarus does is improve the accuracy of the weapon, and on a shotgun, all that does is make the center of your spread fire straight. The rest of the spread is unchanged. And I don't think that like the airborne accuracy penalty is large enough that it's going to make a really big difference. I mean, I guess you don't really have anything else to put on a shotgun, so it's fine. Keep it.
Quick access sling. Maybe maybe you want to put that on now.
Yeah, actually, that's probably a good option now.
He also says, can you ask Chris and Mylan to have an Aussie off to see who could be the most bogan?
Wait. Mylan, you're from Western Australia, right?
I am.
Yeah, and I can't win.
Oh, what you probably from North Queensland or something, are you? Where are you from?
I'm from Melbourne.
Oh, okay. For everyone at home, Melbourne are all the snobs, mate. They all sitting there drinking all different types of cappuccinos and coffees and all sorts of rubbish. It's a nice part of Australia. I am wearing a flannel, so I guess I'm fighting an uphill battle.
Translated into American, I believe Chris just called Mylan a redneck or something.
I will say that Melbourne is basically the Seattle of Australia.
Yes. It actually has the same feeling that, yeah. There you go.
Veritas Otis 52 says, you just had multiple matches of PvP and you're now feeling a little bit salty. What's your go-to game to calm down? He says his is Spirit Fair.
Oh, that game makes you cry. What are you doing? Although crying is relaxing.
Yeah, that's such a great game.
It's
a great
relaxing.
And I would personally go for something like Dark Souls, or Elden Ring when that comes out.
Yeah.
Like something which is really
something
challenging.
relaxing.
Yeah.
Well,
It
it's
is
not exactly relaxing, but it's like it's deterministic. Like it's hard in a way that I know I can beat it. Whereas I don't know that I can beat a particular person at PvP. If I'm getting stomped in PvP, I can go and play a PvE game, even if it's really hard, and feel like the AI aren't being cheap. They're there for my enjoyment.
Yeah. Nathan Sane says, Dear Proctor of Chris, what's your favorite anime and which character do you most relate to in said anime? Sincerely, anime.
Wait, do Studio Ghibli movies count?
Yes.
No, I'll give you 2 answers. So my favorite anime movie is Porco Rosso, which is the Studio Ghibli movie about seaplane pilots on the Adriatic Sea, and the main character is a humanoid pig for some reason. That's great. My favorite series is yeah. Yes, it's a Japanese animation.
No, don't start the conversation again. I had to. We spent so long arguing about it. Oh.
My favorite
Side
series
quest.
is Cowboy Bebop.
Are you looking forward to the Netflix live action, or are you scared?
My opinion on it flip-flops every trailer that comes out. Like
That's
the first one was
fair.
like, this is great. And the second was like, that looks really weird. I don't know. I'm going to watch it. We'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully it's fun.
I feel like they're trying to do it right. We'll see whether they end up doing it.
I know it was made in France, so it's not technically anime. But did you see Arcane?
Oh, damn. How good is that? Yeah, that
was
looks
pretty
amazing. It's like, I'm not that into League of Legends. I've played a fair bit. But yeah, like that show is great. Definitely going to watch
Enjoyed the
rest.
first episode. Yeah.
Plu says, I just got a new job after 4 years of working at the one I'm in right now. So I want to know, what's the most legendary moment you've seen someone quit or yourself quit a job? There's a great video of a girl quitting a Walmart job right now that's going around.
Yeah.
It's
Over the-
hilarious.
over
She
the
just tells
overcomes.
off everybody.
That's pretty great.
Chris
Yeah,
is
no,
like,
I-
Telesto just made heaps of people quit.
Telesto gets a new manager every like 2 weeks. Weirdly.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm not going to mention anything from my own career. There are some.
Okay. Hey, we else got one?
It's all too
Good
recent.
quitting story.
I was working at a small company as occupational therapist, and the boss was not very nice, and he fired another OT behind me, and I stood up from my desk to talk, and he said, "Are you quitting?" I said, "Yeah, fine." And like basically 50% of the people that worked there, we walked out like on the spot.
Nice.
We went to
Oh.
it. We were drinking cocktails by 9 o'clock
Did
in
you
the
go
morning
to
on
the
a Friday.
servo?
Went to the servo, picked up a pack of Winnie Blues, Mrs. Max, put the thongs on, headed straight for the beach, mate.
I was working at a liquor store when I was in my early 20s, and the boss gave me a promotion. He wanted me to be like a manager of a store. And I got so freaked out. I accepted the promotion, but then I went home and I got so freaked out that I was going to become like a liquor store manager for the rest of my life that I never showed up again. I just completely bailed.
You just had a crisis of, oh God,
Yeah.
Success, run
I
away.
Hugo Rune 79 says, if you could have a Willy Wonka style golden ticket to go on a tour of any factory in the world, which factory would you visit? And would you be disappointed if it wasn't gifted to you at the end?
It's quite the expectation.
Factory tour.
it's quite the expectation.
You
Yeah.
know?
You invited me, now it's mine.
Factory tour.
In my dream world, Nintendo is actually like Willy Wonka's factory. Like it's like literally like
Yeah.
green tubes everywhere.
Yeah,
and
everyone
like
travels
Mario's
via
just
green
chilling.
tubes.
To be fair, you could go to Nintendo World and have that experience in Japan.
Not the same. Not the same. Too fake.
Okay.
And I bet if you were to go to like a Nintendo development studio, it would be very disappointing.
It probably would.
It's not like that at all, I'm sure. I find factories really boring. Am I the only one? I thought that the
I used to like that show, How It's Made. That was kind of neat, but that was only like
yeah.
5 minutes on each thing.
The Boeing factory in Everett near Seattle is pretty cool.
Yeah?
Yeah,
that
maybe something like
process.
spacecraft or aircraft would be pretty cool.
Yeah, like just the
You
scale.
got a free
right? Like,
plane at the end. That'd be pretty cool too.
yeah, they
Your
do those
rocket
away at
ship.
the end of the tour.
You're visiting SpaceX and they gift you a rocket. You're like,
Yeah, I want the one shaped like a dick specifically.
yeah. Now you got to buy the fuel to launch this thing.
Oh yeah,
I saw a Twitter
insurance is going to be a
question
nightmare.
that I thought was pretty interesting, if you don't mind me butting in, Brian.
Not at all.
Job. So this one was from Lego, who said, does the data show any weapons in PvP that are overperforming but are not yet popular? If you don't want to say because you don't want to break the game, that's fine. But if you want to give a hint, that would be interesting to know.
Yeah, there is one that's top of mind that has a pretty high win rate that I don't want to nerf.
Yeah, because if you name it, you're just basically making work for yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a.
Where should we be looking? What archetype should we be looking into?
Can't even do that. Community's too good, Mylad. They sniff it out quick.
Terrible.
If I randomly start using a weapon I've never used before, don't question it.
I will say though that like high win rate on a weapon isn't particularly informative necessarily because like there are certain weapons that require quite a lot of skill to use, and so high skill players use them and they have a high win rate. And like, what does that mean? It doesn't actually suggest that the weapon is generally overpowered.
Oh, I want a hint or something. What color is it?
I can't say anything. We'll give it away.
Fine, keep your secrets.
Why, such a nerd.
I hope it's a gun I already used. But then that means I'm bad. Never mind. Take that.
Atheon's doggo, but has a fancy hat, says, what's your favorite fast food burger joint? If you can't pick, what's your top 3?
Sweet burger joint. I quite like Five Guys.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Anywhere where they have man buns and beers, usually you're going to get a pretty good burger. It's going to cost you, though. It's going to be like $17.
Where do you sit with Dick's in Seattle?
Oh, I was like, what? Huh?
I mean, I see
something
all the time.
It's part of the fun.
I don't know. I think it's like a local taste thing. They're decent.
Like In-N-Out Burger, where it's like California's like, yeah, In-N-Out Burger is this burger place. It's okay, you know, it's you eat there. You know,
No, I
people
lived in
rail on it.
California for 2 years. I was not a big fan of In-N-Out. I'm sure I've just made a lot of enemies. They did have good fries. Other than that,
Oh, yeah. Not
Yeah.
bad.
Trash can fries. Eating them. Yep.
Regular Dingo says, I'd love to see Holtzman back on the show someday, but are the WoW references politically correct after all that happened at Blizzard? Has Holtzman been canceled because he likes WoW?
Holtz is in chat. Holtz, you
Oh,
canceled?
man.
It's getting canceled
Do we
by
need to ban him?
association.
He didn't get back on the show. Got cancelled.
Trud says, has Chris ever done a shoey?
that's disgusting.
That doesn't even, you guys don't even know what a shoey is, do
I
you?
have
You know
no
what a
idea.
shoey is?
All
I
right.
assume it's drinking beer out of a shoe.
Yes, it is. You grab
Yeah,
the
I-
shoe, you pour beer into it, and then you scull out of your shoe.
Huh.
Yeah, there's
Shoey.
another Aussie that still lives in Australia who I play Destiny with a fair bit, and he's always talking about shoeys. And
Yeah?
it's so gross.
what's good
Appeal.
about a shoey? Does it have extra seasoning?
Lafer? I mean, I don't know.
I
don't know
gotta
why-
assume you're already
there's
pretty
nothing
drunk
good
by the
about
time
it.
you get
I
around
think
to
so.
doing
Soul
a
of
shoey.
beer.
I just think it's something gross to do, I guess.
Yeah, it's like this gross dare thing. Surely, like
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't go home and like pull off one of your boots and pour a beer into it and drink it right
Pour
like,
yourself a
on your
shoey
couch.
right before
like-
bed.
Just walk around the house with a shoe thinking it's like the best receptacle for a beer.
So
Have
we
you
need to
have you
put
convinced
the-
anyone at like, but have you introduced any
no.
traditions to Bungie? Like, have you encouraged like, oh yeah, everybody does a shoey. Yeah, go on, take your shoe off and drink from that.
No, I don't want to put people off going to Australia. I do have one tradition which was handed down to me by Aussies when I worked at 343 Industries. There were
Yeah.
a bunch of Aussies there when I started, and the first one to leave handed the next one his talking Steve Irwin doll. And then
Love
when I
it.
left, there were no Aussies left, so I had to take the Steve Irwin doll with me.
Oh, what does it say?
Aw.
Crikey,
You remain though.
One of its phrases is crikey.
crikey.
Of course it is.
Does it have like the pull tab in the back, like the string
It's
in
got
the back,
it's
or is
got
it
a
like
button on its shirt pocket.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Mm.
I
Khaki.
wish I had it
Oh.
nearby. I'd play it. That'd be great.
Last question of the night. I feel like this one's pretty due. The Mohegan 9 says, "Why is a koala not a bear? Because he doesn't have the qualifications."
That's bad.
It's,
What
quite
are you
bad.
talking about?
It's bad enough that I chuckled at it. It wasn't really a question.
Yeah, it's not a question.
No, we did have a
Yeah.
question that people were very excited to find the answer for, which is, what are your views on the Great Emu War?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you find it?
Yeah, don't fuck around with emus. Is my takeaway.
Yeah. Did you
Small hitboxes on
Did you-
those heads, right?
did you
Yeah.
pick a side in the emu war?
And I'm always rooting for the natural, like the local wildlife. I think they are kind of a pest, right? Like, but still.
Have you ever been assaulted by an emu?
No, but I've been attacked by a swan. That was pretty
Wow.
scary.
Yes.
I was 5.
Yeah, swans are kind of
jerks.
aggressive and they hiss.
Yeah,
Um,
swans, yeah, they get mad.
I used to live in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia and has like a ton of bushland, like coming right into the city. And I used to ride my bike home, and there were pretty often kangaroos, like just lounging on the hot pavement. And
Wow.
those are gigantic, pretty scary.
And then you get off your bike, you jump on the back of them, you ride them home, right?
Yeah,
You don't have buses
into the
there.
mouth,
You just have
like a horse.
local kangaroos.
I did once convince someone that we ride kangaroos to school.
Nice.
Were they American?
Yes.
There's
Oh,
stupid
man.
people in every country. It's just America.
Yeah. Of course.
Spread
naturally.
out.
It's a coincidence though. No?
It's a coincidence.
Yeah.
A coincidence.
Oh man. Well,
That's it.
I think
So
that's
many
the episode,
questions we
right?
could ask. It was like high impact fusion rifles, which, I'm going to ask quickly. How do you feel about high impact fusion rifles with now the fusion rifle change and there's a bunch of like the other ones that precisions, et cetera, that have been really
Mhm.
good and are really good. But high impacts are
Yeah.
uh,
Too
not hitting
far?
the-
Or are you happy they're getting a little
Hitting-
less limelight?
I'm kind of happy that like the high impacts are a little bit out of the spotlight, but like man, flashbacks to a rental, right? But
Mhm.
Yes.
yeah, they're not quite strong enough now, and they've got a little buff coming in Witch Queen. Like I think
Oh,
they're
interesting.
a little bit
Okay.
tricky to dial in because if you give them too much damage, then you can start getting 3 bolts at absurd ranges.
Mhm.
So we've got to be a little bit careful. It's one of those where we just nudge it up a little bit at a time. But yeah, we're nudging
What's
them
the
up.
hardest archetype to tune?
Hmm. I'm probably grenade launchers.
Mm.
But like after that, fusion rifles are pretty hard. This is one of those where like if fusion rifles are really good, they become incredibly oppressive because they're so rangy compared to shotguns.
Yeah.
And there's so many factors as well. Like this is part of the problem with high impact fusions because if you can consistently land 4 bolts on someone, you can map them. But like
Yeah.
combination of stability and like range and things can mean it's very hard to predictably do that. And then if we make it too easy, then suddenly they're dominant. So
Right.
yeah, they're fiddly.
Well, they're getting a bit of a
Are
buff.
slow rate of fire weapons harder to tune than high rate of fire weapons, or is it the reverse?
Yeah, they are because you have less granularity in damage. So, like, if you want to, say, buff an auto rifle, you can say, "Oh, we'll take 1 bullet off your TTK, and it'll reduce it by 0.07 seconds." But like, what are we going to do for a hand cannon? Make it a 2-shot kill?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then there are ease of use things, right? Like you can say, "Oh, we'll make it 1 crit 2 body" or something like that. But like, you don't have that much wiggle room when you've got a weapon that does high damage per bullet.
Right.
Well, very cool.
Oh.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us and
Yeah.
coming on the show. We
Yeah,
really
thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
dropping those
absolutely.
nuggets.
Thanks for having me. Long
Yeah.
time
We
listener.
Could
Yeah, we-
easily do a 4-hour show.
Yep.
Easy
You know, we didn't get to go all the way through everything else that was in the TWAB. I do want to mention there's a really cool emblem celebrating transgender awareness and all that. So you should
Yes.
definitely go in, grab that emblem. It's free. So, make sure
Yeah,
to check
everybody
out,
can get it. Yeah.
yeah, make sure to check out the TWAB for that. And
That is a cool
And
emblem.
they're also
Yeah.
putting all the proceeds for the Bungie Pride pin in November toward Trans Lifeline.
Yep. Yeah, really cool. So, but yeah, it was awesome. Really, always a pleasure to talk. The the nuts and bolts. get into the business of why Telesto is breaking things. So yeah, thank you so much, Chris, for coming on and talking. Yeah, that's the
Any
episode.
excuse to nerd out about the Destiny sandbox.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
That's so interesting.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's the episode. Shout out to our Patreon members and our Twitch subs for making the shows happen. We guys appreciate all of you, and we appreciate everyone tuning in live here on Twitch and also listening in your car or podcast place or wherever you listen, or on
In
YouTube
your
too.
shower.
Yeah, in your shower while you're drinking a shower beer, Foster's specifically
And
to
Foster's,
celebrate.
yep.
Yeah.
You have to
With
get
a
an extra
shoe,
beer,
with a
big
shoe,
shower
yeah.
holder. Foster's
You
don't
not
drink
supposed to do
Foster's.
in the shower.
You drink.
No one drinks
You
Foster's.
drink Foster's when you're doing a shoey in the shower. All right.
I have been
Yeah,
assured
maybe.
that Foster's is Australian for beer.
Out of all, I have
You can't
questions
see
for the
Bryce smiling,
Australians.
but he is. Yeah.
Out of all the stereotypes about Australians, why does the Foster's thing seem to annoy Australians the most?
Because nobody drinks it here. That's why.
It's
made
literally
up.
not imported into.
I think there's one that's more annoying. It's the throw another shrimp on the Barbie one. Because Australians don't call them
Ooh.
shrimp, we call them prawns.
Ooh.
Get it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll add that.
Yeah,
to my
there's that
repertoire.
phrase, don't come to raw prawn with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's the show. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.